Viewers saw charm, glitz, and nostalgia when Jay Leno sat across from Hollywood icons. What they failed to see, however, were the crimes, scandals, and secrets that molded Hollywood's heyday behind those smiles. Some of these celebrities' success was based on their intellect and purity, despite leading completely different lives. Leno once made a joke about how older Hollywood guests were more mysterious than those from today. He was correct. There were darker stories behind the glitz, the laughing, and the well-practiced interviews than any home viewer could have imagined. We are revealing 9 visitors from the era known as the Golden Age today, who were not only complex but also extremely dangerous. From a well-liked comic who was charged with a horrifying crime to a brave movie star who concealed horrifying facts. These are the legends whose celebrity outshined their morality. However, the narrative begins with a single individual whose demise destroyed Hollywood's facade of innocence. A controversy so explosive that it almost brought down the silent film industry as a whole. It was impossible to ignore Frances Farmer's talent and enthusiasm as a starlet. She appeared destined for fame based on her breakout performances and her captivating appearance on stage and cinema. Behind the bright lights, however, Farmer's life turned into a warning about how Hollywood could degrade the very people it praised. Her disobedient attitude ran counter to both social norms and studio bosses. She opposed the rigid control that the studios attempted to impose, spoke out against hypocrisy, and criticized parts that she considered humiliating. Unfortunately, her resistance came at a high cost during a time when women who disobeyed authority faced severe punishment. Under dubious circumstances, Farmer was repeatedly arrested, publicly humiliated, and ultimately institutionalized. The dark connections between celebrity, power, and mental health exploitation in Hollywood were brought to light by reports of coerced medical treatments, such as shock therapy. Farmer's talent remained indisputable in spite of these obstacles. Although her legacy became intimately linked with tragedy, her performances maintained a raw intensity that enthralled spectators. Her tale exposed the harsh side of Hollywood's heyday, which could both reward a star for defying expectations and propel them to extraordinary heights. The biography of Frances Farmer serves as a reminder that celebrity is frequently a flimsy facade. A system that protects looks rather than individuals can break even the most talented in the race for fame. Her story, coupled with that of Arbuckle, Flynn, Mitchum, and the others, provides a harsh picture. There were sinister, perilous, and unforgettable shadows hidden behind the glitz and hilarity of Jay Leno's guests. A world of sparkling stars, glitzy premieres, and memorable performances characterized Hollywood's golden age. However, the lives of Roscoe Arbuckle, Errol Flynn, Robert Mitchum, Lila Leeds, John Drew Barrymore, Mae West, Leni Riefenstahl, Gloria Graham, and Frances Farmer demonstrate that celebrity frequently conceals aspects of life that are considerably more sinister than the general public ever realized. Their lives were changed and occasionally destroyed by scandals, crimes, and personal demons that lay underneath their charm, brilliance, and laughter. Although these icons were greeted with smiles and cheers on Jay Leno's couch, the reality behind the cameras was far more nuanced. Some people used their charm as a defense. Others became victims of hypocrisy and violence. And some boosted their power through scandal. Every tale serves as a reminder that Hollywood's heyday was not only a time of glitz and glamour but also one in which it was extremely difficult to distinguish between greatness and evil. Therefore, keep in mind that celebrity can inspire, entertain, and enlighten the next time you see them on a talk show. However, it can also hide startling, unnerving, and memorable mysteries. The reality of the Golden Age are far more eerie than anyone ever imagined, despite the fact that it may sparkle in remembrance. Before Buster Keaton or Charlie Chaplin, there was Roscoe, Fatty Arbuckle, the man who silently made millions of people laugh. He made millions of cash and collaborated with Chaplin and other Hollywood icons, making him one of the first real celebrities. However, in 1921, the world witnessed his smile transform into a scandal so horrifying that it almost brought an end to the silent film period. That September, Arbuckle threw a spectacular party at San Francisco's St. Francis Hotel. Prohibition regulations did not stop the unrestricted flow of alcohol. Virginia Rapp, a young actress, was one of the attendees. She was discovered to be seriously unwell by the end of that night, and she passed only a few days later. The gossip mill burst into flames. Newspaper headlines cried out that Arbuckle had committed unimaginable crimes that ultimately resulted in her demise. The information was startling, misrepresented, and frequently overstated by reporters looking to sell papers. Nevertheless, the charges persisted. After being accused of homicide, Arbuckle's name came to represent the moral decline of Hollywood. Reporters referred to him as a monster and the devil of Hollywood during the trial, which devolved into a media circus. After 3 trials, Arbuckle was ultimately found not guilty, but his career was destroyed. His films were not shown in theaters. He was the villain that the public had been waiting for. Hollywood reacted in a panic. Studios devised the Motion Picture Production Code, the first attempt to clean up the industry's image. Arbuckle spent his last years directing under a false identity after going from being a beloved performer to an outcast in exile. Once the face of laughter, he was a broken man who passed away in 1933 at the age of 46. His demise destroyed more than one career. Decades of Hollywood cover-ups, morality clauses, and the delusion that every happy face on TV was innocent were all influenced by it. However, Jay Leno's next man on his list wasn't ruined by unfounded claims, thus Arbuckle's narrative was just the beginning. He had a very real dark side. The quintessential Hollywood hero was Errol Flynn. Tall, endearing, and incredibly self-assured. On TV, he was the man that all women and men aspired to be with. Flynn's smile, sword, and swagger characterized the heyday of adventure movies, from Captain Blood to The Adventures of Robin Hood. Off-screen, however, that same charm concealed something much more sinister. Flynn's extravagant way of life had become legendary by the early 1940s. He hosted extravagant parties that were full of ladies, drink, and mayhem. It was the sort of behavior that gossip columnists in Hollywood whispered about but never dared to publish in full. However, all changed in 1942. 2 minors came forward and accused Flynn of exploiting them when they were intoxicated. One at a house in Beverly Hills, the other on his yacht. They were explosive charges. And the news stories were harsh. The people witnessed their daring hero being hauled into court for the first time, facing grave charges that may end his career. However, Flynn wasn't the type of man to back down from a fight. He bent over it. He was portrayed by his defense team as a victim of overzealous prosecutors and gold diggers. As if he were still playing the hero, fans flocked to the courthouse to cheer him on. One of the most dramatic trials in Hollywood history was this one. And Flynn's supporters rejoiced when he was found not guilty. However, something had changed. His off-screen image as a careless seducer only intensified, and his reputation was irrevocably damaged. He then joked about the situation, even adopting the phrase, "in like Flynn," turning a controversy into a punchline. But behind the scenes, his life was falling apart. He was plagued by alcoholism, addiction, and never-ending scandal until he passed away at the age of 50. His allure persisted, but so did the discomfort associated with his name. The darker reality of Hollywood's heroes, that occasionally the most beloved celebrities were also the most dangerous, was made clear by Flynn's case. Furthermore, the next individual on Jay Leno's list demonstrated that Hollywood rebellion wasn't always a glossy affair. At times, it was merely illegal. Long before James Dean ever appeared, Robert Mitchum was the epitome of rebellion because of his deep voice, drowsy eyes, and carefree demeanor, which Hollywood could never replicate. However, Mitchum's defiance went beyond his on-screen image. It was hazardous, dirty, and real. Mitchum's life fell apart in 1948, just as his career was taking off. When authorities searched a private residence in Laurel Canyon late one summer evening, they discovered the movie star smoking marijuana. That wasn't a small infraction back then. It was a controversy that ended his career. Like wildfire, the news spread. A movie star was busted in a drug den. Mitchum and a young actress called Lila Leeds were taken into custody, photographed, and imprisoned. Fans were stunned by the images of him incarcerated. Never before had one of Hollywood's top stars fallen from favor so spectacularly. However, Mitchum's response added even more intrigue to the tale. He didn't say sorry. "It was just the same as being in a movie, except I did not get to go home at night." He dismissed it with a laugh in interviews, solidifying his reputation as Hollywood's ultimate bad boy. Mitchum worked hard and wore prison stripes during his roughly 50 days in jail. However, after he left, his notoriety only increased. He became the embodiment of the anti-hero, sardonic, fearless, and untamed. Because he didn't try to be flawless, the public adored him even more. But behind the camera, he was living the kind of life that made it difficult to distinguish between myth and self-destruction, one that was increasingly characterized by booze, fights, and turmoil. Mitchum was a wonderful fit for Jay Leno's remark, made years later, that some of his Golden Age guests were tougher than any contemporary celebrity. He had intelligence but was irresponsible, and he was charming but erratic. One minute he could frighten a studio executive, and the next he would give a performance worthy of an Oscar. Robert Mitchum demonstrated that Hollywood relied on disobedience, not just glamorized it. However, his narrative also directly contributed to the demise of the woman who was involved in the same incident but had a completely different ending to her life. Lila Leeds was a young Hollywood sensation on the rise. Gorgeous, aspirational, and poised to dominate the movie industry. However, her life took a tragic turn in 1948. When she co-starred with Robert Mitchum in the industry-shocking drug controversy. Drug arrests were more than just legal issues at the time. They were death sentences for their careers, and Leeds soon saw how harsh Hollywood could be. Her apprehension made headlines. Pictures of her and Mitchum in handcuffs went viral across the country. She was seen by the public as more than just a troubled individual. She turned into a symbol of depravity. A warning about the consequences of combining ambition with recklessness. Leeds lacked the same safety net as Mitchum, whose career endured because of his charisma and notoriety. The doors to her dream world slammed shut, friends turned away, and film studios refused to hire her. Leeds was caught in the crossfire of Hollywood's strict moral standards at the time. Her talent was completely overshadowed by the incident. Her tabloid image overshadowed any promise she could have had on screen. She attempted to reconstruct her life years later, but the stigma persisted, demonstrating that in the Golden Age, a single mistake could forever define a career. In Hollywood's Golden Age, celebrity was a delicate, two-edged sword, and being caught at the wrong time might wipe everything out. Lila Leeds' story serves as a sobering reminder of this. The harsher realities of the time were also brought to light by her experience. Compared to men, women were subject to stricter regulations and faced significantly harsher penalties for scandal. The next person on our list demonstrated that even a well-known family name could not protect someone from a lifetime of chaos, as shocking as Leeds' demise was. Hollywood aristocracy was the birthplace of John Drew Barrymore. He possessed a name that opened doors, promising a life of fame and opportunity, as the son of renowned actor John Barrymore. However, John Drew's life was more characterized by controversy, addiction, and disorder than by success, in contrast to the well-known members of his family. Barrymore battled substance abuse from a young age and repeatedly ran afoul of the law and studio bosses. His well-documented offenses for assault, public intoxication, and drug possession stood in sharp contrast to the glitz his last name suggested. His reputation for unreliability and unpredictable behavior followed him everywhere, even when he tried to pursue a career in acting. Projects were shelved, jobs were lost, and even his own family became suspicious of his capricious behavior. His tumultuous life was more than a personal hardship. It affected the following generation. Drew Barrymore, his daughter, was exposed to the worst aspects of Hollywood stardom as she grew up in an unstable environment. Even the most distinguished family name could not protect someone from the repercussions of self-destructive behavior, as demonstrated by John Drew's narrative, which turned into a warning against inherited privilege. The perils that lurked beneath the Golden Age's silver screen were best illustrated by Barrymore's life. You could only go so far with talent, and a career was frequently more defined by personal issues than by skill. Nevertheless, Barrymore had a perverse charm despite his public shame. He had a charm that brought him fleeting success but never real atonement. The next person on Jay Leno's list redefined what it meant to be hazardous in Hollywood by fusing controversy, legality, and fame in a way that elevated scandal to a new level. Hollywood's first provocateur was Mae West. She became a celebrity who constantly questioned social standards thanks to her seductive voice, witty humor, and unreserved sensuality. However, West's audacity not only shocked viewers but also rocked a whole country. West was found guilty in 1927 of tainting young people's morality because of the suggestive material in her theater play, Sex. She famously turned her 10 days in jail into material for her profession, embracing rather than avoiding the attention. West utilized her notoriety to create a bold, brazen, and unavoidable presence. Hollywood soon recognized that controversy could be just as lucrative as skill. Innuendo and double entendres that straddled the acceptable boundary were common in her flicks. Every wink and quip was intended to amuse and provoke. West, however, had perfected the skill of surviving in a male-dominated field beneath the flash and glamour. Publicity became her sword, and scandal her shield. She made audiences and critics alike face their own unease with female authority and sexuality, exposed hypocrisy, and ridiculed censorship. The tale of Mae West demonstrates that being bad in Hollywood did not always entail breaking the law. It occasionally required disobeying authority figures, breaking social standards, and having the guts to be who you are without apology. Her career demonstrated that scandal could be used as a tool rather than as a punishment, and that there was space in Hollywood's heyday for rebels who were willing to break the rules and reinvent the industry to fit their bold vision. We then go from bold rebels to a filmmaker whose work conflates creativity and involvement in one of the most heinous regimes in history. Leni Riefenstahl was a trailblazer in the film industry, transforming the medium with her technical prowess and visual narrative. Her films were stunning, avant-garde, and impactful, but beneath the artistic beauty was a terrifying moral concession. Riefenstahl gained notoriety for producing propaganda movies for the Nazi government, including Triumph of the Will, a documentary that extolled Adolf Hitler and the Nuremberg Rally in 1934. The distinction between ideology and art was muddled in her work. Her ability to control lighting, choreograph crowds, and frame shots with cinematic genius astounded reviewers, but the subjects of her films supported a government that committed unimaginable crimes. The legacy of Riefenstahl is nuanced. Her films unquestionably honored and supported the power of a totalitarian state, despite her claims that her art was solely aesthetic. She was arrested and questioned after the war, but she was never found guilty of war crimes. Nevertheless, her reputation was damaged for all time. She was seen by many as complicit, serving as a warning that having talent by itself did not save one from the repercussions of siding with evil. Her narrative fascinated Hollywood as well, despite its distance from European politics. Her methods still had an impact on filmmakers all around the world decades later, yet the stigma associated with her moral decisions persisted. The tale of Riefenstahl is a disturbing illustration of how genius may be used as a weapon. In the realm of celebrity and authority, talent may enlighten, amuse, and motivate. However, it can also conceal moral lapses, forcing viewers to confront the unsettling reality of genius. The next celebrity on Jay Leno's list had a controversial personal life that was equally damaging but far less political. The epitome of Hollywood's femme fatale, Gloria Graham was dazzling, seductive, and captivating on screen. Her roles in movies like In a Lonely Place and The Big Heat enthralled viewers, becoming one of the Golden Age's most enduring actresses. Hollywood insiders were astonished to learn of the scandalous and contentious personal life that was hidden beneath the glitz and on-screen allure. Graham's relationship with director Nicholas Ray, which apparently led to an illicit romance with his young stepson, was the subject of her most well-known scandal. In Hollywood circles, there were rumors of moral impropriety and promiscuity, and tabloids enthusiastically fueled the public's interest in her private life. Graham's reputation suffered greatly, in contrast to several celebrities whose careers survived scandal. Opportunities diminished, and rumors and criticism tainted her career's once promising path. The harsh double standards of the time were brought to light by her account. Women in Hollywood were evaluated far more intensively than men, and any divergence from moral expectations may irreparably harm a career. Although there was no denying Graham's talent, her legacy in the public eye was centered on her personal decisions. The fame that followed her was too great even for her well-received performances. Gloria Graham's life serves as a reminder that in Hollywood's golden age, stardom and controversy were linked. One blunder, one rumor, or one relationship might overshadow years of craftsmanship, demonstrating that the negative aspects of celebrity were frequently just as fascinating and occasionally more durable than the positive ones. We then wrap up with a warning about mental health and exploitation, about a celebrity whose genius was tragically ruined by the system that was supposed to help her.